is.
Yeah.
Welcome to Walking Your Talk. I'm Mark Iorio.
I'm Al Cini.
And this is Lisa Manyoky.
Lisa Manyoky, what a pleasure.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to have you on this. Nice to meet you. We've known each other for 114 years. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Well, listen, Walking Your Talk's all about following people that we really admire, right?
Yeah, that's it.
And really walking your talk. So that's what we're here to talk about.
And we couldn't have found a better guest to talk about that.
She's the best.
In your own life, Lisa, you've had experience where you've learned how to be the person you are by observing other people. Maybe you can kind of talk a little bit about that.
Well, my longest standing one is a guy named George Michael Ivica. He was my college English professor. Now, I was equally good in art and in academia when I was in high school, and I thought, if I pursue art, well, I don't know if it'll feed my brain enough. So I went to a university that gave me the opportunity to have academics within easy reach if arts didn't do the trick, and as suspected, they didn't. So at the end of my freshman year, I went to the head of the English department and asked the director if he could recommend an instructor who would make my brain sweat.
Make my brain
And he
sweat.
said, have I
You
got the
actually
man
said that?
for you? I did.
Wow.
And
that was George.
George Michael Ivica, who was also known as the grandfather of all JFK assassination research.
Conspiracy theory
Yes.
type? Okay.
But he taught a class called Comedy and Literature. Now, I had no interest in literature, but I wanted to work. So it was a senior level class. He waived all the entry requirements, and I took that class. When the guy came into the classroom, it was in a flurry. I mean, there was all this activity around him, and he put his briefcase on his desk and a cup of coffee that promptly spilled. And he stood there looking at it, and he said these words. Now, this is 37 years ago. He said, "That's comedy." He said, "Comedy is the elicitation of organic euphoria through exuberance of word and deed." And I said, what have I done?
Did you remember it right away, or did you have to study it?
No, I do, but not then,
It's a
but I
great
do
definition.
now. But I wanted my brain to sweat, not implode.
Oh, okay.
So he said, no, you'll get it. So I did eventually get it. And after the first test, I thought, okay, I did pretty well. There was no grade. He just said, see me in my office. I'll fix all your writing errors in less than 5 minutes. I thought, well, either there aren't that many or he's really fast. But he, in 5 minutes, reinforced writing protocol, sentence structure, word usage, and such. All the lessons of the past that they just gelled in this moment and became my rudder for written and spoken communication moving forward.
Ever since then?
Ever since then.
So there was a before, kind of Lisa Manyoky, and an after this experience. So the before and the after, how would you characterize that?
Well, he oozed passion. I mean, you knew when this guy was in the room. He had total integrity, but his words, which I treasure words. I mean, I've even earned the title the Words Maestro by some. They're important. And whether they're written or spoken, it is essential that they are clear and kind and relevant and reflective of what you mean to say. And in a few minutes, he taught me that. And I insist that no matter what I write or the professionals with whom I work or what they say is really reflective of what they mean, and that it's kind, and that they'll be proud to show it anywhere.
Right.
I mean, some of the big things too, Lisa, is with words is there's got to be an action following the words, right? And you depict that. I mean, it's all about the presence of a person, right?
Yes.
Being kind to someone, saying something kind is one thing, but actually being kind, right, is another. So George has had a tremendous amount of influence on your life going forward, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the work you do now is presence coaching.
Yes.
I want to make sure I get that right. Maybe you can characterize that.
Well, business presence, meaning, and not so much mindfulness, even though mindfulness is part of it, but rather what happens when you walk into a room and after you leave. Is it reflective of what's in here? Does it match what you're putting out there? And is it working?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. So, and these are things you learned from George from the moment he walked in that room.
From the moment.
There was, and it was authentic, and it was real. It wasn't put on. It wasn't
Not
a
at all.
mask.
Nope.
And the goal isn't to mimic George. The goal is to be you, with a few little hints of George, I guess, added into it.
Yes, he was exuberant.
Yeah.
You know, I know what happens when I walk into a room, and I think everybody needs to know that.
Yeah, that's
You need
important.
to know, is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? Are people running for cover, or are they saying, oh, come closer?
Yeah.
Do you feel like that happened almost immediately after meeting him and after experiencing his the class and the way he taught? Did that happen to you sort of immediately or over time? You kept looking at him and attending his class and feeling like, wow, I really admire this professor.
You know, it was instant. I was a little overwhelmed, I admit it, but there was such integrity to his delivery. And then it stayed that way. It didn't change. So this wasn't some performance to capture the attention of students.
Was this way.
The whole
This is
course,
how
it was beyond.
every time. Right.
I even took the sequel, Tragedy and Literature.
Oh, no kidding.
Not because I cared about literature, but I liked being his student. And what's really nice is that at the end of the year, he was nominated to become Teacher of the Year, and he could select a student to advocate on his behalf, and he chose me to do it.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh,
That's
wow.
great.
That's
So
great.
I got the privilege of returning that favor to him, which
Yeah.
was pretty remarkable.
You know, you're really identifying a very important part, a very important aspect of any role model, and that is, it's certainly the way they behave, but there's a thing that they love, whatever that might be. You may not come into a class with a guy like George loving what he loves, but you leave the class loving what he loved and caring about it.
And I loved what he did for me, too.
Yeah,
and was
that's-
happy to repay the favor.
Yeah, that is so, that's so valuable.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Great.
Oftentimes too, Lisa, you know, when you find a mentor like this, a person like this, one of the things you want to do is pay them back, you know, and doing what you did for him sort of paid him back. But what else did you do as time
Well,
went on?
a few years ago, see, in my professional life, I mean, words and their usage, I'm precision. There's a lot of precision about them. I insist
Yeah.
on hair splitting so the messages are correct. And I looked him up to see if I could write him a note of thanks.
Wow.
And it turned out he'd passed away. So I tracked down his wife, and
Yeah.
I wrote to her on his behalf.
Oh, that's
and she
wonderful.
responded.
She
Oh,
did?
really?
That's
She
great.
did.
Yeah, that must have
Yeah.
been, I mean, in a way, he may have passed away, but he lives on, and all the people he inspired the way he did.
Definitely does.
Yeah.
So that's really
It's a
Interesting
remarkable
tribute.
story, and you know, what's also interesting. Al and I talked about this last week. You know, I had a role model, a mentor in my work life, and I'm sure you have as well, Al. Not just personal, but people that inspired us to do things, you know, in our business world or business life or whatever. And there are other people that he touched as well, and I'm wondering whether or not you know of people within the classroom setting that George had probably inspired the way he inspired you.
Well, I don't know any, I mean, this was back in 1982, so I don't know any of the other students. However, at his passing, all of the articles that were written about him not only listed that he'd passed, but they paid great tribute to him and his teachings and the work that he did. So it was much more than just, oh, sorry you're gone. I mean, it was a real honorarium that was delivered in a number of places. So his reputation as being an impactful mentor to many,
so much more than just 3 credits, you know, which is
Definitely.
what most college classes are for the credit.
Right.
But every now and then you encounter a teacher who loves what they're teaching so much that you fall in love with it too. And I had a English high school teacher who convinced me that the Cliff Notes were not the way to go. And, you know, actually got me to fall in love with reading the whole thing and not just coming up with a paper at the end of the class to get the credit for it. And, you know, I think that's, so now you're a presence coach and you work with people to try to get them in a way to, you want to get them to follow the role model experience you had with George.
I do. Look, today's communication culture is messy.
Okay.
And if you put it out there, it's out there and it's staying out there.
So based on how you learned what you've learned from George, how would you teach me to be more like George through you?
Be like George?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, he was an authentic guy and he had a, so tell me about presence coaching and how that works.
If anybody loves what they do, do it.
Yeah.
No matter what, do it. And because if you don't, then that disconnect, people are going to feel that there's some inconsistency or that there's something that's not quite aligned. So the point of if your heart says, I want to do that versus that, then do what your heart says. You know, I mean, I got a lot of people when I was going to pursue art who said, you'll be a starving artist. I never starved. You know, be a doctor. You have the grades for it. But I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
So passion, whatever you're passionate about, pay it homage and use it.
No.
Because then it becomes much easier to be who you are and then to find the people who enjoy who you are just because of who you are, not because you've worn a great suit or have a nice hairdo.
Yeah.
There's integrity from the inside out.
Yeah, that level of authenticity is so important. And
It is.
you know what you're talking about today, Lisa, is that what George inspired in you, you're passing on to others, and that's really what we talk about here on Walking Your Talk.
It's about that.
It's
I mean, it really is.
It's paying it forward from someone who really had an enormous impact on your life, and now you've touched so many other lives as a result of that. So he lives on inside of you, and you know,
could live on in your kids and people you've worked with.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, he does, because when it comes to expressing my kids, I was in their social media when they were younger.
Yeah.
If I saw something I didn't like, it went, or
Right.
they learned, don't do this. I correct professionals who are
Yeah.
putting things out there that
Yeah.
shouldn't.
yeah.
There's a technical term for that. Social evolution, us learning from each other and evolving as a result
Absolutely,
of that.
yeah.
That technical term kind of destroys the essence of it, though. It's really about loving what you do and expressing that love in a way that other people can observe.
Yep. And paying homage to the people that had taught you already.
It's
in your
not
past.
forgetting where you got it.
Yeah.
Right.
True.
Well, it's been a great episode. Al,
always-
thank you.
always fun.
Lisa, you've been
As
awesome.
always.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Great talking with you.
We are going to be here next week on Walking Your Talk. Our friend Al's going to be away, but
I'll be back the week after that.
every single week we talk about what we talked about today, and that is
The power of role models and leadership by example. It's so critical.
paying homage to people that have influenced and impacted your lives. in
And
the
paying
past.
it forward to other people you can help the
Yep.
same way.
Yep.
Great.
We'll see you next week on Walking Your Talk, everyone. Have a wonderful week. I'm Mark Iorio
Al Cini?
and Lisa Manyoky. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you next week.